Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to the race reaction for the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix. And what a race. What a finish to that race. Unbelievable. How close was that? I mean, 1.2 seconds between first and third over the line. That is absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to say right off the bat, to be fair, that I would say we had a race of two halves, or two races there, if you want to say. I felt like the first part of that race was very much the setup, you know, maybe the countdown to the stream, you know, just building a little bit of, you know, let's sell myself a little bit, anticipation and excitement, and then all of a sudden, it just blew up into madness. Brilliant finish to that race. Great driving from Carlos Sainz. And just to confirm, Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris are in different teams, but you'd have thought today they were in the same team. Great teamwork. Fantastic call from Mercedes. We'll get into it all properly, of course, but I can't get over that race. And actually, to be fair, really great comeback from Max Verstappen to P5, very nearly P4. And of course, I'm a little bit happy and emotional and all that because Liam Lawson, first points in F1, couple of points for him. What else you got to do for that drive? I mean, come on, what a start. But yeah, absolutely unreal race. Looks like you all had a fantastic time. Don't forget to vote in the poll, by the way. Usual 4 options. Rate the Singapore Grand Prix. Great, good, average, bad. Great is absolutely cruising to victory today, which nobody managed to do in F1. So it was a tight old race, but a lot of fun. Really, really enjoyed that. And I hope that's a precursor to the rest of the season. It's unlikely. It's very, very likely Red Bull will be back next week in Japan and probably the favourites for that one. But hey, let's enjoy tonight. Absolutely fantastic. Give me a rating if you want in chat out of 10. 10 being, oh my God, what have I just witnessed? And 1 being, I wish I'd just gone to bed. Let me know. I don't think there'll be too many 1s, to be fair. There'll be quite a few 11s probably in the chat. But yeah, great stuff. But I always, I'm not going negative, but I need to make the point right from the start that the start of that race, the first portion of it wasn't all that thrilling, but it just built. It did feel like the anticipation was building. It felt like something was coming with the Ferraris and their strategy, and it was just great. But we'll start, as we always do, with the winners, and it is Ferrari, not a Red Bull. For the first time in 15 races, the first time this season as well, Red Bull haven't won today. It is a Ferrari win. Carlos Sainz driving absolutely superbly today. Pole position yesterday, got off the line really nicely. Great start as well for Leclerc to jump George Russell. Managing the pace up front, I think it's fair to say that one. A lot of pace management to try and conserve tyres and the car and all of that business, trying to keep the field bunched up so that there were no big gaps for people to drop into and try and pull the undercut. Kind of taking strategy options away from people. That's a really smart drive. That's how you drive Monaco as well, isn't it? Very much backing people up a bit and trying to give yourself an advantage. Brilliant driving from Sainz to do all of that. And then, as if that's not enough, right at the end, all that tension, all that stress he must have been under, because Mercedes were coming. I believed with about 10 laps to go, well, I could not see Mercedes not winning that race. I thought they were on for a 1-2. I really, really did. The pace was unbelievable. They were cruising up to the back of them, but then Carlos Sainz decides, actually, I'm going to back Norris up a little bit here. Give him DRS, which helps Norris defend against Russell and Hamilton, and it all just worked out perfectly. Superb driving from Carlos Sainz. I think I saw, Jonty's in chat, actually, he'll confirm. I think I saw Jonty say on Twitter that it's like a champion's drive almost, the way he thought that one out. It's a very, almost Alain Prost-esque, isn't it? The kind of drive as slow as possible to win, I think was the phrase they used on Sky Sports as an example. And it just worked perfectly for him. And Ferrari, on Carlos Sainz's side of the garage, nailed strategy today, and I just can't fault them on that side, and I can't fault Carlos. I don't want to fault Carlos. I think he was brilliant, and then don't forget, 2 races ago, he didn't have a single podium. He's now got 2 pole positions, a win, and a couple of podiums. I mean, what a second half of the season, if we want to call it that, he's potentially on for. Great drive from Carlos, and great stuff for Ferrari, and it's, there is an air of disappointment. It would have been nice, just on a statistical point of view, for history and records, to see Red Bull do them all, because it's never been done. It may never be done, but maybe we've seen today that it's almost impossible to do it. Possibly. It's just a thought, it's a lot of races in a season, but Ferrari deserve that. They've been great all weekend. I mean, they've topped pretty much every session, didn't they, as well? If they didn't top every session, they certainly came close to it. So it's no great surprise to see them up there, but real good stuff in the last 2 races from Ferrari, and superb from Sainz today. And I think Leclerc today did the best he could. The team, in Russell's words, I think Russell said something along the lines of, it looks like Ferrari going to sacrifice, or was told Ferrari going to sacrifice Leclerc. That's kind of how it felt a little bit, with them trying to get Leclerc to back the pack up a bit and give Carlos some breathing room as well. And then the pit stops and the decision not to pit him for a second time when Mercedes did. I think that's the big question mark for me over Ferrari today. I'm not going to be negative about Ferrari's strategy too much, but I do think, if we're being completely fair and balanced about this, we do have to ask the question, of course, with the benefit of well over an hour's worth of hindsight now. Why did Ferrari not just go the same way as Mercedes and take that risk with Leclerc? Because I feel like that was, but then, he didn't have great defense against Mercedes, but did that lap that he kept them behind, was that the difference? Is that what won or helped Carlos to win the race. So maybe actually, if they had bought him in and it had gone wrong or anything like that, maybe he would have ended up not being able to hold them back a little bit. Again, it's all shoulda, woulda, coulda. We don't know what would have happened and which way it would have gone. But when I'm watching that, I'm thinking, surely you've split the strategy at the start. Surely you're pitting Charles Leclerc in that situation, which is maybe why I'm not a strategist or a team boss. Maybe that's why I don't have a job I've never applied, or I'm not qualified to. That's one point, but also clearly not great at strategy. But that's what you're looking in a situation. You think maybe you do make that call, but it doesn't matter. They won the race at the end of the day. Yeah, it's not very good for Leclerc to be fourth, but would he have been fighting for a podium anyway? Would Mercedes have had too much pace? Because Mercedes were rapid today. They had really good race pace even before they made their pit stop. So again, we'll never know, but it's just something to bear in mind as far as I'm concerned. And actually, Charles Leclerc only 2.5 tenths clear of Verstappen over the line. He was 4 seconds a lap slower than Verstappen, who was on much fresher mediums. His mediums done 22 laps by the end of the race. Leclerc's hards had done 42. So if you remember from back in if you remember from earlier in the race when the Red Bulls were on the older tyres and the Ferraris and that were coming through on the fresher tyres, it's kind of roles reversed in that situation. It was quite a pace advantage. So I think one more lap and Leclerc may have ended up fifth place. But I think he seemed quite disappointed afterwards. I think he feels he could have had a podium today, but it's not worked out for him, and it happens, doesn't it? But I don't want to take too much away from Ferrari today. They were fantastic. Not much more to add in the notes. I'm going to try and I've got notes, but there's a lot of stuff missing because I just got so enthralled in those final few laps that I'm going to have to do much of it from memory. So I might be coming to you in chat going, was that correct? And you can let me know. What are you saying about Ferrari before I get on to the rest of the field? We'll do what we always do. We'll fly through the field, hopefully in about 45 minutes. It does take a while. I do like to waffle if you knew. But then we'll come to you in Q&A and you'll go, Sean, you forgot about that amazing move that Leclerc made where he literally flew over 6 cars or something like that. It didn't happen, but there you go. Hey to Will, FP1 Will in chat, who amazes me, by the way. His comedy review is out already, and it took me as long to make my bloody stream. So impressive work, mate. Hope you well. Ferrari didn't have new mediums. That's why they didn't pit, says Vesk. Yeah, but 42 lap old Haas, even if the new mediums were a couple of laps on them, is that a little bit better than I don't know how old the mediums were, I guess is my point, Vesk, but even newer, even softs at that point in the race would have got to the end with a couple of laps on them. So yeah, again, it's all shoulda, woulda, coulda. I'm not going into it. I'm not going to tear Ferrari down. Every single week I feel like I'm tearing them down for strategy, and I'm not going to do that today because it all worked out in the end. And Sainz played a massive part in that, by the way. Just absolute mega brain stuff going on for Carlos today. Sainz helped Ferrari more than they helped him, says Irene, making my point there for me. Thank you very much. Brad says he found the race meh. I stand by what I say. First part of it, a bit flat. The finale was epic, though. I mean, 1.2 seconds between 3 cars. Throw Russell in there as well. We'll get to him in a minute. There's nothing between them. It was great stuff. Yes, it's probably going to happen, Warden, with Alfa Romeo, I'll be honest. I've got a few notes this time, though. We will talk about Alpha Tauri in a bit. Charles started on softs. He should have had a medium set. He was behind Russell, though, so all he could have done was slow Hamilton if he boxed at the same time as Merck, says Ruse. Fair enough. That's a good point, yeah. But, it's all hindsight. It's all me thinking in the moment. That's what I would have done, but that's why, again, I'm not a strategist. Second place today in the race, Lando freaking Norris, who was less than a second off the win today, working brilliantly with Carlos Sainz. I think I don't know if McLaren felt they had the pace today, because obviously Carlos Sainz was backing up a little bit and said on his radio he was doing it deliberately to allow Norris to get within DRS. So I don't know if Norris would have the pace to win, but he was bloody close to it, and a fantastic drive. The upgrade's working well. Did a great job out there. Really solid points, despite hitting the wall. The same wall that Russell hit on the final lap just before him, I think Norris was saying on the final lap. So that could have ended so badly, but just superb driving from him. And it's so good to see McLaren. I think we can... I remember when they first sort of came good, we were kind of going, is this track specific? Is it high speed? Is it low speed? Is it medium speed? I think we can say that McLaren is, for the most part, more or less good, more or less everywhere. I know there are some exceptions, but they've clearly made a massive step this season, and they've delivered again today. And Norris has been excellent these last few races, hasn't he? He really has. And I legitimately think even though the gap seems pretty large, that Aston Martin are going to be looking over their shoulder in the constructors, because I think McLaren, although I think Aston Martin 217, McLaren 139, that seems huge, but if McLaren keep picking up these top-end points, these podiums and these 4th and 5th places, and Aston keep having weekends like this or tail-end points, this could be something that when we get to Abu Dhabi could, as we've seen before between those two teams, actually in their different iterations, be fighting for P4. So it's McLaren are doing a great job. Oscar Piastri as well, superb today. 10 places in the McLaren that isn't upgraded. Was only 3 seconds off Pierre Gasly for P6. Was quicker than him by 0.8 of a second on the last lap. Great driving from Piastri, who's impressed me all season, to be honest, has Oscar. And I mean, Norris has as well. The whole McLaren team have certainly since the upgrade came in, but I think he's done a superb job as well. Superb is a word I'm using a lot for these drivers up there, because I think they were brilliant today in very difficult conditions. Very hot, very humid. It's a long race, getting on for the full 2 hours, isn't it, I think, once again. So really impressed with Piastri. Great stuff from Norris. It's big points as well, like I say. And I've not got a huge number of notes on McLaren, and it's not because they weren't doing anything. They were there, but Norris was very much just sort of in the mix, and he was part of that pace management at the front, and it wasn't until the latter stages where he really, I guess you could say, came alive as he's trying to keep that DRS to sight so he can defend from the Mercedes, and that Norris almost reflected the race, I suppose you could say, in some way. So absolutely fantastic from McLaren. Well done to them. Like I say, I think they've got a shot at P4. They're going to need a few more implosions or weekend brain farts from Aston Martin, but it could happen. Still quite a few races to go this season. Is there a good 7 left? 7 or 8? I think there's 7, isn't there? So it's possible. So well done. And Oscar, again, Oscar Piastri this season, I think Martin Brundle said it in commentary over the weekend at some point that he's already shown that he's going to be on the grid for quite some time. I feel that with Piastri. So they've got a good lineup there, McLaren. They're really set for the future. They just need to make sure they deliver a car so these drivers want to stay there. And at the moment, it's tough to see why you'd walk away. It does need to be said on Ferrari and McLaren, and I do mean this with the greatest of respect, even with Ferrari's pace earlier in the weekend. Red Bull, well, pooped the bed, if you want to put it that way, a little bit this weekend, and I think next weekend you're going to see them bounce back, and that they should be the favourites going into that again. So this battle we saw today for the win is probably the battle for best of the rest behind the Red Bulls, but that's still big points. And I don't want to take too much away from people, because whatever happened, they didn't have issues with the cars. They got the setups right, they got the cars right, they got the updates right, they delivered this weekend. Red Bull didn't. So although there'll be a lot of people, you know how I like to cover things off, you know I like to make sure I'm balanced on this, there'll be a lot of people who say, well, if Red Bull had been up there, they wouldn't have won. No, they wouldn't, but guess what? Red Bull weren't up there because they weren't good enough this weekend. Rare to say that, but it happens. And it reminds me, actually, very quickly, we're coming to Mercedes now, but it reminds me, do you remember when Mercedes were dominating seasons, and it just looked like every weekend they could win, and then there'd be a race like a Singapore, sometimes was Singapore, that would come along and they'd be really weak, and then you'd have this amazing race between Red Bull and Ferrari and co for those big points, and Mercedes would kind of know where. It feels a little bit like that. So again, back to my point about not winning every race, we will talk about Red Bull properly in a minute. Maybe it's just not something that can be done, but Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton P3, George Russell DNF. I've seen quite a few people say they feel sorry for George Russell. I feel for him in the sense that it's a real shame he couldn't convert that into at least third place, because he has been rapid all weekend. He drove really, really well today, and it was the final lap where he hit the wall and then obviously crashed out. But I guess the reason I don't feel sorry for him is that he's made that mistake. It sounds harsh, but that's just the kind of person I am. You know, I feel for him that he couldn't turn it into a podium, but he made the mistake. It's not like he had a mechanical failure that cost him that. It's his error. He's hit the wall. He's concentrating. He's pushing hard. These things happen. It's a street circuit. He's clunked the wall straight off and into the wall. He was okay. It looked like quite a heavy shunt. Not quite to the standard of Lance Stroll yesterday, of course, but he was fine. But just sounded so gutted on team radio. Seemed very emotional as well in the pen, because, like I say, he drove really well. And yet you could argue, had almost earned that podium with the way driven, and he could still have won. Who would have known on that final lap, whether he would have thrown one up the inside of Norris or got the chance to have a go at Sainz? We'll never know now. But again, his mistake, and it all came because he pitted under the virtual safety car with Lewis Hamilton and was coming out of the pits 1.7 seconds a lap quicker at times than the race leader. I think at one stage he was a second quicker in the middle sector. So quick on those fresher tyres. But it was Lewis Hamilton who was P4 behind George Russell and sort of hounding him a little bit in the final couple of laps that managed to, I guess you could say, pick up the pieces to get that podium. Bit of a strange race from Hamilton in a couple of incidents that a lot of people will be screaming penalty and a lot of people won't be screaming penalty. You can probably work out what I'm saying there in terms of picking your side. With some people who think he absolutely should have got them and some who think he shouldn't have, but you probably guess what caps they're wearing. But his pace seemed to... He wasn't slow today. That's not what I'm saying. But it was in that latter stage with the fresher tyres, with the chance of a win potentially, that taste of potential victory. He just seemed to step up another level. Again, I'm not saying he wasn't stepping up all weekend and he wasn't rapid all weekend, but it was just in that final phase when I think he realised he had a chance, and obviously other people's tyres going off, he suddenly was absolutely on it. And it's not just that his tyres were great, because George Russell's tyres were great, and Hamilton was sticking with him and closing in on him a little bit, and it got really, really tense between the two. Then he was on the radio saying George needs to pick up the pace a little bit, and I think couple more laps, maybe they could have won it, but also a couple more laps, maybe Lewis would have said, you know what, I've got to go for this. I need to try and go for it and make the move on George. So we've got a chance here. But overall, really great drive at the end from Hamilton. But we'll talk about the incidents. Way late is how I've worded it in my notes on the break into turn one to get around the outside of Norris. But kind of, he cuts the chicane that first couple of corners and rejoins to the right of the bollard and stays ahead of Russell and Norris, and was told to give the position back to Russell and eventually did the same for Norris. At the time, I think it was correct what Lando Norris... It felt correct what Lando Norris was saying over the radio about he's just gained that because he's been able to go, into that corner massively late on the brakes, down the outside. If he's not late on the brakes, he's not making that move. But actually, when you watch the replays and the onboards, the reason he has to take to the chicane, take to the runoff, is because he kind of meets George Russell, and if he doesn't, there's a chance there of contact. And so I guess what I'm saying is I think he had Norris anyway without skipping over the first couple of corners, but it made sense just to make sure you've covered off from race control. Because you never know what the FIA are going to do. One week they give you a penalty for that, another week they won't, because there's no consistency. We already know that. So I think he did the right thing to give the position back, but looking at it, I'm not really sure, other than running into his teammate, what Hamilton's supposed to do there either. He definitely appeared to have Norris in turn one. And then the one a little bit later, a few laps later, he had a move on Sergio Perez around the outside, appeared to complete the move off track. That's another one. He got a warning for track limits, I think, and he got a lap time deleted. But that's another one that another weekend, that's a penalty. This time it wasn't. I'm not going to sit here and try and second guess what the FIA are doing, but at this point, if you know what they're doing, let me know, because we had all the decisions yesterday, and it's sort of like a reprimand is now considered a penalty. And I went back, by the way, I promised I would, and I went back and looked at some of the decisions of late with impeding in qualifying, and I didn't find any that addressed a reprimand as a penalty and gave out a load of reprimands. There were a lot of 3-second grid drops in there, so I'm not sure whether that's a new thing. Hopefully we'll get some clarification on that. But again, it's consistency from the FIA, and I've been watching more than 30 years now, 31, 32 years. I've kind of given up, hoping for FIA consistency. It's just not going to happen. But again, I think they're the decisions that can go either way, and I think he did the right thing in giving those positions back when he did. Just it covers off any kind of issue there, doesn't it? But the Perez one I'm surprised that wasn't looked at, but I'll be honest, as I always am on these streams, I haven't seen a replay of that one properly. So let me know what you think in chat. Do you think that maybe that one on Perez should have been looked at, or is there a reason why it wasn't? Have you heard anything? Have you read anything? Have you been watching telly with Ted talking or anything like that? Let me know. But I think, like I say, turn one, first lap, it's kind of run into your teammate or cut the corner. You're going to cut the corner and then give the positions back, and you've covered yourself, haven't you? So it did take him a while to give them back. So I don't know if there was some debate going on with with race control. Let me go back to Mercedes pictures quickly before we get on to Red Bull. But I think overall, Hamilton this weekend, really good drive again. First podium, apparently, since Silverstone, which surprised me. I don't know why it surprised me. It just did. I could have sworn he'd been up there a little bit sooner. I've seen the Albon Perez thing, so I will comment on that when we get to Perez in just a moment. That one's a little bit, for me, slam dunk. Kaori, hey Kaori, says lap 1 scenario. Yeah, that's kind of the feeling for me on that one. That's what I'm saying. But in that situation, sometimes it's better to take a 5-second penalty if you've got the pace to kind of build the gap and not have to worry behind you. But there are also instances where it just makes sense to make sure you've covered yourself, because there's no point going into a race and getting a 5-second penalty that earlier and having to carry that until your pit stop. You may as well just give the places back. Are there those that maybe believe that perhaps that cost him a shot at second today? I don't know, but if you've got anything in chat, I'll have a look at what you're saying. Red Raven said it should have been looked at least, even if it's no further investigation, but I think it wasn't even an investigation. No, it wasn't. I don't think it was noted either, which was weird. And Greg says, I thought Hamilton got away with one at turn 1 because he eventually gave the spots back, and how Perez didn't get looked at for hitting Yuki. Again, we're going to come back to those in a moment when we get to Red Bull, which is, I believe, the next team. It is indeed. Yeah, Lewis did the right thing, says Random. I agree. Surprised it wasn't a penalty if it's a slam dunk as that. Perez Albon, that's Warden again talking about that one. And John says the stewards were all over the place this weekend. I think that's a very good... actually, no. I was going to say that's a very good summary of this weekend, John T, in one sentence. But actually, mate, I think you could just copy and paste that, save it somewhere, and pop that in the chat every week, because I feel like that's a nice summary of most weekends with the FIA. So why worry? Why type it again, mate? Just save it. I would. It's a bit like there's an evergreen tweet that I have that I sometimes throw out every now and again. It's when Ferrari make an absolute shocker on strategy. Not today, of course, but I like to throw it out because it's just an evergreen tweet. It's perfect. Ruby says no penalty for people actually trying to pass. I'll say it, Ruby. You know what's coming. If that had been Verstappen on Hamilton, what would you have said? I think Ruby knows I'm only giving a grief. We give each other a bit of grief on that one. Ruby is I think it's fair to say a big Lewis Hamilton fan, Ruby. Correct me if I'm wrong. You might hate him. I don't know. But and George has that Lewis did the right thing, letting George back through, not Lando. Lando was done at turn 1 and Lewis made the corner. Again, though, has Lewis let him through because the team have told him to? Have the team let him through because race control have said something? It's just what I'm saying is it's just better to be safe than to be sorry in that one. So, yeah. And Warden says, remember when they changed the stewards and race director thing to make it more consistent between races? Laughing my rear end off. Yeah. I'll have a look at weather later, James Rich, for Japan. We'll do a little brief look ahead to that. Obviously, preview next Thursday. So, yeah. But anything else on the top 3 teams before we rock on to the rest of the grid, really? I guess what I'm going to say, just to kind of summarise, Ferrari, Sainz was absolutely superb. Excellent today. Great strategy calls from him. Good strategy from the team as well with him. Smart thinking. Charles Leclerc, unfortunate with not pitting, but you know, he actually said afterwards, I'm just looking now, he actually said afterwards that he doesn't think that pitting under the virtual safety car would have made any difference to his race anyway. So maybe that's a nothing thing. Could have maybe gone for fastest lap on a set of softs late on or something, but Verstappen was cruising up to the back of him, wasn't he? So maybe that wasn't an option as well. So, you know, a little bit unfortunate there in that sense. He did also lose quite a bit of time in the pit stop, it's worth saying, on Leclerc. I forgot to mention that one. They double stacked with obviously Sainz coming in first under the safety car. In comes Leclerc behind, and then I think there was an issue with the jack and all sorts, and it was 5.7 second stop, which cost him a couple of seconds and lost some places as well, losing out to Norris and Russell, so that compromised him anyway. Lando Norris and McLaren, excellent as well. Great stuff from Norris today, despite hitting the wall late on. Great defensive driving too. Great work with Carlos Sainz, because they're apparently teammates again now. Oscar Piastri, superb 10 places gained. Shame for Russell that he couldn't get that podium because he was rapid today, but these things happen when you're pushing hard, don't they? And Lewis Hamilton, excellent drive as well to get that podium. His first since Singapore, since Silverstone. It's definitely his first since Singapore. So we'll look at qualifying later. Sainz was smooth this weekend, says Chiori. If you look at Hamilton braking, there was never a way for him to make the corner, says Scott. Which one, Scott? If you talk about the Perez one, I couldn't say. I've not seen a replay, but if you look at, he definitely would have made turn 1, or I'm confident he would have made turn 1 at the start, but he would have hit Russell. So I suppose you could argue if he would have hit another car, he didn't make the corner, did he? But it's all gonna be about opinions on that one. I'm sure because I'm not screaming penalty, there'll be a few people going, oh, typical British bias, even though I don't support any of the British drivers, which always makes me giggle. But anyway, the sound and the replay of Norris and Russell clipping the wall was awesome, says Tyler. Hey, I think Tyler is a new patron. Hey Tyler, I've got your name on the end of the screen today, mate. Thank you very much for your support, and good to see you in chat today. How did Leclerc lose over 20 seconds in 10 laps to the Mercs, says Irene? His tyres are gone. At times he was 4 seconds a lap slower than Verstappen, who was on the fresher mediums. He'd done 42 laps on his hards. Verstappen 22 on the mediums, and Hamilton, for example, only on 18 on the mediums. So it was all tyres. I mean, on the final lap he did a 140.9. Verstappen did a 138.1. So it was just wasn't even close, was it, in the end? So yeah. See you later, Scott. Thank you for popping along, mate. Please do drop a like before you go. And please do drop a like, by the way, if you are watching. 125 likes so far, 629 here. We can get that up a little bit more. Let's get that well over 200. Let's get towards 300. Why not? Let's be ambitious for a change. It was a great race. Thumbs up for the smooth operator. Not for me. Do it for Carlos Sainz. Why not? There you go. Please do subscribe if you're new as well. Same content again next weekend with the preview, the reaction, and of course the post-quali waffle. Thank you very much to Greg for your super chat. Says, what were you going to say about Russell on the qualifying waffle yesterday? Go on, let it rip. We'll do it later if I get a chance, Greg. Try and remind me. In fact, I'll try and keep that open so I remember. If I forget, apologies. If not, we'll do it next Saturday because they're a bit more waffly, which is saying something really, given that these are waffly. But thank you for your super chat, mate. Really, really appreciate the support there. So, yeah, great weekend. In the end, I've really enjoyed this weekend, and I really enjoyed that race. So, which is a bit of a surprise. I thought that, given the way things were going, I was going to be pretty foul today. But no, I think it was a really enjoyable race. So that's where I am with this one. But we've done the top three. Again, it is a reaction, technically, not a review. So if there's any questions later, we'll come back to them. And if there's anything I've missed, we can do it then as well. But Red Bull, Max Verstappen, 5th place. Wow. Sergio Perez in 8th. We'll talk about Perez in just a moment with Max Verstappen. I actually think, so I was thinking about this before I went live and how to word this, and I'm probably going to still get it wrong, but based on the precedent or the expectations they've set this season, that is a horrific result. Based on where they were in practice and qualifying, I actually think that's a really good result from Max Verstappen to P5, especially when you look at not just the fact he started 11th and made it up to P5 on a street track that's not the easiest to overtake on at times, but also when you consider how the race played out with the timing of the safety car, which didn't go their way, the fact they were so far off the pace at one point. I mean, they were just nowhere, were they, really, when those tyres went off. So I think, again, based on what we've seen this season, that's a really poor result. If you actually look at the weekend in isolation, that's actually a really decent result from Max Verstappen today in P5. He did get a little bit of ticking off again from GP, his race engineer. I've got a little bit of the quote here. It says, there is no merit in being within 1 second of Ocon at this stage. You've been here before and you've been hurt by this before. Kind of in no uncertain terms, giving him a bit of a rollicking, if you like, and telling him to back off a bit, look after his tyres, because it's not really doing him any favours. Simple as that. It's not helping him at that point. So he's got to look after the tyres and run long, and just one of those days where he needed to be told, I think. We've seen it before, haven't we? A bit of a disagreement between the two of them, but it's always quite good to listen to over the radio. Didn't pit under the safety car, of course. Both cars at the restart, though, had absolutely zero grip and just basically went backwards. Did eventually pit at the end of lap 40 for mediums, rejoined P15, made his way back through for one reason or another with overtakes and the incidents that had happened. Alonso falling back a little bit and made his way back to 5th place by the end of the race, and was only, like I say, 2.5 tenths off Leclerc over the line. 4 seconds a lap quicker at times is mental pace. So I think it's a one-off. For those who are maybe going, this is it, this is where it's all changing, it's a one-off. The talk in the paddock, by the way, Sky addressed it because it's a conspiracy theory and they love to address a conspiracy theory, but especially when it's not against their favourites. But the talk in the paddock from the people who actually know what they're talking about, so not me and not some of the people on Sky, is that this is nothing to do with the technical directive clarification thing. This is just one of those things where, as Christian Horner said yesterday, nothing worked. Oversteer, understeer, couldn't get the tyres in the right window on Saturday, all of that kind of thing. But it's just the perfect storm against them almost. And again, you go back to what I was saying a bit ago. Mercedes domination, there were tracks where they would suffer, and it was sometimes Singapore. Nobody, based on the pace that weekend, was really expecting Mercedes to be massively quick. But look at that lap that Lewis Hamilton pulled out in qualifying. Some say one of the greatest qualifying laps of all time, certainly one of his greatest. So, your car, if your car's struggling, you're going to struggle, but you've got to make the best you can of it. And that's what Verstappen's done today with P5. And it just feels like it's a weekend that Red Bull have had, that Mercedes have had. Ferrari will have had when they were dominating. I can't think of any off the top of my head where weekends didn't go their way, and a Williams or I don't know, I'm trying to think of another team now, or a McLaren might win the race back then, but that's kind of where we are with Red Bull this weekend. I fully expect to see them back up the top, probably winning next Sunday in Japan. Sergio Perez lost place at the start, got back to P13 by lap 7, didn't pit under the safety car either, and eventually pitted on lap 39 for mediums and dropped to P18 and last. Scruffy race, I think, from Perez today. Like I say, lost places off the line, had to come back from that one. I have a theory, before we get to the summons and the things that he did wrong today. I do have a theory. If you go back to just after the safety car restart, or the laps after the safety car restart, where Red Bull were just dropping back because they had no grip on those tyres, they were finished. I think, it is only a theory, I have nothing to back this up other than what I was watching. I think Perez was being used a little bit there by Red Bull to try and give Verstappen the best opportunity possible to pit and find a gap, and not be in too much traffic. It didn't work because he still came out in P15, of course, but it was just the way he was defending. The way he was defending on tyres that had gone, it looked like a completely futile exercise, but he fought hard and managed to actually, I think Max had about 8 seconds on him, 8 or 9 seconds before Perez pitted. So I think they were using him, but also as soon as Perez was passed by, I think it was Ocon, he just went backwards. So I get the feeling, and I think Perez was also told on radio, he said he wanted to pit, and they said, no, stay out. So I don't necessarily think they said to him, back up the pack, but I think they saw that with the tyres gone, telling him to fight hard and keep them behind, maybe was trying to do something in the hope that maybe if Max gets 10 or 15 seconds up the road, then a safety car comes out, maybe they can take advantage of that, but it just didn't work in the end, but it was worth a try. It was definitely worth a try. Let me know what you think in chat. Raul agrees with me. I don't mean to sound sarcastic, Raul. I felt like one of the first time we've agreed in recent weeks. Kaori says 100%. Yeah, I think it's just the way it felt. I don't have any confirmation of that. Maybe we'll hear something. I'll check press releases when we're done as well. I'll run through the field first, then we'll check press releases, but that's my read of that. But Perez is in with the stewards, or should be at this point, if the decision isn't in already. He was summoned for an incident with car 23, which it's Alex Albon, isn't it? I don't believe it's Alex Albon. I know it's Alex Albon. Alleged breach of Appendix L, Chapter 4, Article 2D of the International Sporting Code. That was a Turn 13 incident. I'll tell you about that one in just a moment. Andy's in with a alleged overtaking under the safety car, but that is because allegedly Alex Albon overtook Perez. Yes, so alleged overtaking of car 11 under virtual safety car by car 23. So yeah, so it's Albon overtaking. So Perez under investigation for one thing, and that's the incident with that Alex Albon at Turn 13. If you haven't seen it, there are clips out there online. Basically, to keep it very simple, Perez went in hot and then just kind of drove into the side pod of Alex Albon. It was a very late dive, very ambitious move, as those who like to sit on the fence would probably call it. A bit of an ambitious move. I think he may well face a penalty for that. However, frankly, it's not going to do anything because it would only be 5 seconds anyway, and that would mean he would go from 8th to, oh yeah, that's right, 8th. So it wouldn't actually make any difference, but he goes in to turn 13, tries to make the move. It's an ambitious move, very late, and then it's sort of side front wheel to Alex Albon's side pod. Alex Albon kind of goes a bit straight on, and Perez goes through. So I think the stewards are definitely looking at that, and I can see that Actually, do you know what? I'll go back to the point that Jonty made about the stewards this weekend. I could see that going either way, frankly, the way they are at the moment. But I would say that would be a massive penalty, possibly a reprimand, as Kaori says. Maybe a penalty reprimand. But I think he'll be lucky to get away with that. But I think the stewards have got an out here if they want it. They can be firm on this and make no difference to the race result because it's 11 seconds back to Liam Lawson. Now, if I was the stewards today, I would be giving Sergio Perez an 11.4 second penalty so that Liam Lawson moves up into 8th place. But that is complete and total bias, and I don't care. So there you go. That's what I'd be doing if I was a steward today. 11.4 seconds exactly will be absolutely fine. In fact, if they want 11.385 is also fine. So there you go. But I'd imagine it'll be a couple of points on his license and possibly 5 seconds, which doesn't change an awful lot. But I think that was a bit ambitious by Sergio Perez. Again, I'll come to you in chat in just a moment. Next up, Alpine, Pierre Gasly. Excellent race today from Gasly in 6th place. Esteban Ocon, DNF, actually pre-DNF. Excellent drive from Ocon as well, to be fair. Made a lovely, we'll do Ocon quickly, did a lovely switchback move on the struggling Perez on lap 39 for P7, which was a really nice move, actually. Played a blinder. Pulled off at lap 43 at turn 2, which I think was at the pit exit, with a mechanical issue that triggered the virtual safety car. But prior to that, it was racing really nicely indeed. And Pierre Gasly, like I say, 6th place, 3 seconds up the road from Piastri, 17 off Verstappen. Quite angry over team radio from what I was listening to on the F1 website that Magnussen forced him off track when defending his position. Magnussen did get a black and white flag for that, by the way. But yeah, very racy today, Gasly. Some really good points as well. Just a bit of a shame for Alpine. Ocon couldn't get to the end, but I've not seen any official word. I'll come to Super Chats in just a moment, but I haven't seen any official word from Alpine as to why Ocon retired. I'm just going to have a very quick check on the old Twitex and see if they've said anything. It was definitely mechanical. He's not just pulled over and gone out on board and he's going home. But difficult ending for Esteban is what they've said officially. A difficult ending is a bit of an understatement there. But yeah, I would play the video, but I can't play the bit of Ocon giving his speech. But I can't do that because it's going to get hit by, obviously, copyright probably over the microphone because, you know, FOM, they're funny like that. But yeah, we'll keep an eye out for any press releases. But I think Gasly was great. I think Alpine, kind of what I expected actually this weekend. They were pretty poor in Monza, but that was all about power, and that Renault is not a great power unit. Whereas this weekend, it's a little bit more about a lot more about downforce than it is at Monza. Still needs some good pace for some of the straight runs, obviously, and the changes to the circuit this year. But it was always going to go better for them this weekend, and that kind of was proven. The pace was there, so it's not all doom and gloom for Alpine fans out there. Was it Gearbox? Kevin O'Toole said it was Gearbox. So does Jonathan as well. Possible gearbox issue there. But thank you very much to the super chats as well, by the way. I'll do those now. Ollie, thank you very much, mate. He says, can never watch a race due to the German supermarket and wrestling shows. This is how I keep up to date. Thank you for taking the time to do these. Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate the super chat and your support. I'll try my best to keep going. Keep giving us some great and also terrible insight. Mostly terrible. Thank you as well to Jonathan said, yes, Esteban Ocon. Excellent. Love that. How unlucky on his birthday. Best moves of the race and on former teammates Alonso and Perez. As said above, joint driver of the day. Gasly, mega racy. Alpine revival incoming, says Jonathan. Thank you very much, mate, for your super chat and your continued support. Yeah, I think Alpine can be very happy with this weekend overall in terms of the pace and the improvement on Monza. Obviously, they'll be gutted with Ocon not finishing, but Pierre Gasly, excellent today with P6. I've not got a lot in my notes for them. I feel bad because they were really racy and they were involved. But they were kind of in the second part of the pack, weren't they? In that second phase of the race, they were kind of in and around Perez, who was backing up the field, and then Alonso obviously had his issues. We'll come to him later. They're in that little fight there, but it was really fun to watch. It's always fun in that midfield. So we had really exciting stuff at the front, fighting for the win, but we still had all the action in the midfield as well. That's what made that final stint of the race so thrilling as far as I'm concerned. But we'll no offense to Gasly, no offense to Ocon. We're going to roll on because I've not got an awful lot there. I might have a little bit to say about the next team, though. Liam Lawson. P9, I did a little dance. P9 dropped to P12 in the first few laps off the line. Did say post-race that he needs to work on his starts, which I love, by the way. It would be very easy for him to get as excited as I did. It'd be very easy for him to be talking about, first lot of points, 2 points, ninth place, brilliant result, but he's still looking for perfection. He's still saying, great race, but we need to look at the start. Second race in a row that he fell back, so that's the negative on that, I suppose, but what a drive. And by the way, AlphaTauri, Red Bull Junior team, Liam Lawson wants a seat. He knocks Max Verstappen out of qualifying yesterday, and then today he leaves him just a car's width as Max goes for the move. And I mean just a car's width. If you haven't seen it, go and find it on board. Goodness me. Was not making that easy for him. Super racy. Great stuff from Liam today. 2 more points than Nick De Vries managed in 10 races. 2 more points than Daniel Ricciardo, and only a point less than Yuki Tsunoda, who's been in that car all year. I know there's bias here, so you can all ignore this bit if you want, and you can, call it bias, and you can take it with a pinch of salt. But I think unless I don't see how he can't be in the car next year if he keeps doing this. I'm not saying points every race, but that is overall 3-0 in the races to Lawson over Tsunoda. Technically 2-0 because Monza, Yuki didn't get to start. I think if you include races, they've both finished, it's only 1-0, but it's still 3 races he's beaten Yuki Tsunoda for one reason or another. And I think he's doing a great job. And it's, maybe it's recency bias for some people, that's what they'll say, but I've been watching this guy for years through his junior career. I've been watching him all year in Super Formula. I'm adamant that he is ready for a chance in Formula One, and I think he's proving that today. And proving it in the last 2 races, and he said something really interesting after the race, really great actually. And it's what I like about him. He's a mature head on young shoulders, but he's sort of, I've said this before, he's kind of quite steely. He's more Raikkonen in his approach than he is Norris, if that makes sense. I'm sure he has a lot of fun, and I'm sure he's a really fun, lovely lad. But when you see him in interviews, he's very much, to the point. He's quite frank, and he's not as bubbly maybe as some of the more popular drivers, if you want to call it that, would be. You know what I'm getting at. But he said afterwards that his plan is he's not thinking necessarily about next season. He's been pushing to try and get a seat in F1 for a while. He keeps reminding Red Bull he's there, but his goal for this short window, he called it, of opportunity that he's got to try and show what he can do, his aim is to just maximise it. And then when he's not in that car anymore, whether it be after Japan, whether it be after Qatar, wherever it is, he needs to be able, in himself, to look back and say, I did everything I could. I couldn't have done any more. And I like that, because he knows that's what he's got to do. Just be able to say, I gave it everything. I maximised the opportunity. There's no more I could have done. And if he doesn't get the seat, then he can kind of rest a little bit more easy with that, couldn't he? So I think fantastic from Lawson. But again, I'm biased, and maybe that's going to cause me problems in the future if he does end up being the talent I think he could be. He's still, by the way, I'm not going to sit here claiming future world champion or anything like that, because way too early for that kind of bollocks. He's had a okay junior career, and he's having a fantastic season in Super Formula. He's been really good these first 3 races in F1, but he's got a long way to go. He's got a lot of potential, is the phrase I'd use. So I'm not going to get too carried away, but I think I said it yesterday. I put him in that car. Well, no, I'll be honest. If I was in AlphaTauri's position, I'd be keeping Tsunoda and putting Lawson alongside him. But I know a lot of people were saying yesterday, and I think it's a fair point, and I think I made the point as well, that Ricciardo experience with a youngster like Lawson kind of makes a lot of sense for AlphaTauri with the big changes coming to the team next season. Get yourself a massively experienced driver in Daniel Ricciardo who can kind of help Lawson to grow a little bit and give the team some consistency while Lawson finds his feet fully. So it makes a lot of sense to go that route. But I think I like Yuki. That's the problem as well. So I'd go with Yuki and Liam. But I know I would completely understand why they go with Ricciardo and one of the two of them. Absolutely. But I think again, just very quickly, I said it yesterday, I think if Tsunoda doesn't keep his seat at AlphaTauri, I can see a Williams, for example, if they do decide to change Sargent being interested, I could see him maybe ending up at Aston Martin as a reserve with a view to being in there in 2025, although based on this weekend from Lance Stroll and this season, maybe that might come a bit sooner. You never know. But that's all speculation. On Yuki Tsunoda, I missed this on Perez, actually, so I'll make the point now. A lot of people screaming for Perez for a penalty because of the contact on the first lap. First of all, first lap contact tends to get a little bit more. The stewards are more lenient on that than they are with other things, so maybe that's part of that. But I've watched that back. When you look at it, Perez does go in hot. It is the first lap, so I'll cut him some slack there. There is contact, but Yuki doesn't leave him a lot of space on the inside, and Perez isn't fully alongside. Perez isn't, it's not front wheel to front wheel or anything like that, but he's a good half away alongside. And I think Yuki comes across, maybe doesn't know he's there, and there's contact. For me, in that situation, Perez can't just evaporate. He can't disappear. There's no runoff there. So I think probably more on Perez in that he's gone in there, but also there's not a lot he can do once Yuki turns in. So for me, potentially controversially, I'd call that a first lap, not quite 50-50, but racing incident for me. And I know that'll upset Yuki Tsunoda fans because it cost him the race, because obviously I think he got a puncture and had to retire, but I don't think... Let me go find a clip again. I can't show you it. If you haven't seen it, you have to find yours. We'll have to try and do it together. Read through it together, see what we can do. But I think from what I haven't seen, Yuki's on board, to be fair, which could be interesting. But I just feel like there's not much Perez can do in that situation. So, straight away, look at that. Thank you, twatter. Sure, Mike. That's the noise, just for you. So, yeah. I think Perez is getting on for about halfway alongside. He's on the inside. He's turning right, so he's not sort of turning towards him. He's not full lock, but he's as good as you need to be for that corner. Yuki comes across to take the apex. There's about a tyre's width between Yuki's front wheel and the white line. There's not really anywhere Perez can go there other than into the runoff and over the curb and potentially bounce over the top of Yuki anyway. So I think I can see why Tsunoda and Tsunoda fans are annoyed. I really can. So make that perfectly clear now. But I stand by what I say there. Perez can't evaporate there. He's probably, to quote Martin Brundle, another Martin Brundle line, he's probably earned the right to a little bit more space there. But I don't know if Tsunoda knows he's there, and maybe that's... I'm not... I don't think Tsunoda's deliberately come across to block him or anything. Tsunoda's got his teammate towards his left. He's probably coming in to try and cut underneath to try and gain some position off him, and then Perez... Yeah, I think that for me... I wouldn't go quite as far as 6 of one, half dozen the other, but I'd call that a racing incident. Let me know what you think in chat. That's... Yeah, Mickey says it there. If Yuki had left the space on the inside, then Perez should get a penalty. That's, a bit like I'm saying about Perez on Albon. Albon left Perez lots of space, and Perez still went inside of him. So I think if Yuki's a car's width over to the left and Perez understeers into him, then that's a penalty all day long. But I think Perez can't evaporate. But I'm not going to put too much blame on Yuki either, because, like I say, he's got Lawson not on his outside, but to his outside, and he's kind of you can see he's trying to cut back under to maybe get a run at him, and maybe the car in front of that as well. And maybe he's not realised Perez is on the inside, and then there's a bit of contact there. So I think I might be wrong, but I think when Yuki sees that, he'll probably will have calmed down on that one. But that's the way it is. It's on Twitter. I don't know how to share. Because I'm looking on my phone, so I don't know how to share the links to it on Twitter in the chat, but I can give you the @ if you want to go have a look. In fact, if you go into the search bar on Twitter and just search Perez Tsunoda and go to the video section, it's the first video on there. So, but it's a video from F1newsletter.com, which is just at F1_newsletter, and it's Perez's on board. So I would like to see Yuki's on board, because I feel like that could be quite interesting where he's looking in his mirror, but it doesn't look like he's looking in his mirror for Perez. I'm going to leave it there. That's my reaction to that on the situation with Tsunoda there, but superb from Liam Lawson. I will stop going on about him, I promise. Haas, Kevin Magnussen, 10th place today. Nico Hulkenberg, 13th. Black and white flag for K-Mag, as already mentioned, for forcing Gasly off track while defending position. Outbraked himself in that battle into turn 1 as well, when defending from Gasly, which dropped him from P10 to P16. Pitted under the virtual safety car for soft tyres, and came back from, like I say, what was 16th place to 10th place. So really good recovery from K-Mag today, and there's a point as well. So well done to him there. Good good from Haas. Great weekend from Haas overall, I think. Again, they'll be disappointed with Hulkenberg. I'll get to him in a second, but or Hulkenberg's result. Get to that in a second. But I think overall they'll be very happy with the weekend. Both cars into Q3, and they picked up a point today. Nico Hulkenberg was looking good as well for challenging for points today. Sort of early on, maybe with Verstappen and Perez coming through, Piastri as well. Maybe they'd have struggled to get both cars into points. We'll never know. But what cost Hulkenberg today was that he was stacked in the pits under the safety car, I believe, behind Kevin Magnussen, and that cost him 3 places. So that really did hamper hampered his race, really, his finishing position. Maybe, like I said, I'm not sure that they would have got points anyway. Well, both cars in the points, because you've got Perez and Verstappen, that takes 2 places. You've got Gasly coming through, Piastri as well, so it would have been tough. But I see they got some quotes out from Magnussen. Again, they're doing videos, so I can't really play them. So because I'd be silent while I'm listening as well. So it'd be sort of not the most thrilling of streams. I'm not pretending these are anyway, but yeah, not the most thrilling. But that's ultimately what cost Hulkenberg today was that in the pit lane. So a real shame for Haas there, but it's a point. I'm not sure it's going to be enough to turn their season around. I'm really intrigued to see what this update is going to be. They bring out, I believe, the Circuit of the Americas, Austin. I think that's going to be interesting, but it's a point. It puts them on 12. They're 9 behind Williams. Can we see Haas picking up 9 points between now and the end of the year and Williams not scoring? I can't really. You never know. Of course, a chaotic race, it can all change, but I think Williams are looking good here for P7, and Haas versus Alfa Romeo for P8, and then Alfa Tauri probably going to be last this season by the look of it. But it's a point. It's a point, and it's a decent weekend overall for them, so I think they'll be relatively pleased with that one. On Williams, by the way, Alex Albon, he said over the radio, as soon as we get within half a second, it's incredible how little either front or fun we have. Now, I think it sounded like fun, so obviously making out or clearly saying that, once we get here, we can't really do anything. But he may have said front as well. Ultimately, the radio message was expressing how hard it is to follow once you get within half a second, which is going to come as very little surprise to anybody watching this, I'm sure. So that was kind of it for Albon. Obviously compromised by Perez late on that contact, but actually 11th place today. Pretty solid result, 1.3 seconds off the points. A little bit slower than Magnus on the last lap, so the pace was fairly even. So 11th place isn't awful for Albon today, but an opportunity potentially for points taken away by that contact with Perez, which is another reason why possibly I can see that being a penalty. Let's have a look and see if that's in yet. I'm not sure it will be, but no, still the summons at the moment, so we'll just wait and see if that comes in. But shame for him. Logan Sargent was at one stage as fast as the race leader on lap 12 in P16, which just gives you some idea as to how much they were coasting at the front in that early stage. Got hot into turn 8 and straight into the wall, broke his front wing, got some floor damage as well. He was throwing debris all over the track. His front wing kind of got stuck between what used to be the barge board area and the front wheel, so that wasn't great. Bits everywhere. That caused a safety car on lap 20 for debris. He also pitted under the Ocon virtual safety car, as we're calling it, for mediums. He came home in 14th place, 6/10 off Nico Hulkenberg, and 7/10 just ahead of Fernando Alonso, who's having his own issues. Again, we'll get to him very, very shortly. So a bit of a scruffy one for Sargent today. Not what he needs to be doing if he wants to keep hold of that seat, definitely. Yeah, we'll do that later, or we'll do that another day. We're talking about that kind of thing, but not great from Logan today. But it's it's 14th place. It is second to last. I appreciate that, but it's not last, and he's only 3 places off his teammate. So maybe not horrific, but I don't know. Not great if you're sticking it in the wall. I'm not going to defend him on that, but I don't think Williams had a huge amount of pace today. I think they had a shot at points with Albon, is what I would say on that one. They may have said the same if their press release is out. I don't think their press release will be out because they'll be waiting for the decision from the stewards, although the Red Bull press release is out, so we might have a steward's decision shortly, because generally when teams under investigation get their press releases out, they've usually heard back. So probably just a ticking off and a massive penalty of another reprimand, but I'll keep an eye on it. Hopefully we'll get an answer in a moment. But yeah, I don't know what to say about Williams, honestly. I didn't expect them to be strong this weekend. They were probably stronger than I thought they were going to be, with Albon just outside the points by 1.3 seconds. Monza very much a Williams track. this maybe not so much, but that extra straight probably helped them as well. Although I must say, I am starting to come around to it because they keep talking about how Williams keep talking about how the high downforce tracks are not tracks for us, but that's another car a bit like the McLaren, as I was talking about earlier, that doesn't look great everywhere, but seems to look great at most tracks at the moment. So, for example, Zandvoort, they should have been nowhere, and they had a great result there. They were fantastic in Monza. Actually, I don't think 11th is a bad result today, even though they could have maybe had points. But I think that car is not just it's not just reliant on the low downforce, long straight racetracks like Monza anymore. I think they've got a shot at other tracks as well, which is good. Again, for the millionth time this season, James Vowles is doing such a great job there. Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas, DNF in the end. Ran very long, very much like the Red Bulls, for his first stint. Pitted on lap 40, or at the end of lap 40, rejoined 18th and last, and shortly after that was told no more shifts and stop on track, so mechanical issue there, and that was game over for him. I think from what commentary was saying, he parked the car very well as well, to avoid major yellow flags and a safety car, so good stuff from him, although I think Tsunoda did similar, actually, to be fair. And Zhou Guanyu started from the pit lane after the team decided to change the power unit and make some setup changes as well. Out of part firmly, of course, that's instantly a pit lane start. He would have been 19th on the grid, so it made no difference, which was last, of course, with Stroll not starting. And I think, actually, the setup seemed to work because it put in P12, 10 seconds or so off Albon in front, but 2.5 clear of Hulkenberg. 12th place, not bad for Zhou Guanyu today. I've said this before, kind of where the Alpha is, really. Sort of, if most cars are finishing or whatever, you're expecting them maybe sort of 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th place. So in and around there is decent for Zhou. The most important thing, though, for Zhou is that he's in the car next season. And I'll repeat what I keep saying. I think he earned that. I know a lot of people disagree, but I think he earned that. I won't use the word deserve because I think you have to earn things when it comes to Formula One. You don't instantly deserve a seat. And I think he's earned that. I think a few people make the point that it's more about Bottas's lack of performance than Zhou's step up or anything like that, but it could be a combination of the two. Bottas hasn't been great this season. I think Zhou, I mean, he's basically matching him in terms of race finish and qualifying positions. So, a driver of Bottas's experience, whatever the reason, if you get that close to him, then I think you've earned another season. We'll see what they decide to do in the future, but we can discuss that over the winter and next summer, of course. But as always, very little on Alfa Romeo. Going back to what Warden was saying, they were there, as we often say on these streams. But I think good result for Zhou today, all things considered. I'm sure they'll love some points, but not to be today in terms of pace. And last, and I think very much least this weekend, Aston Martin, actually. I'll come to Super Chat in a second, Ruby. I've seen it, don't worry. Just want to do this quickly. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso was 15th and last. Locked up on the pit entry and crossed the line as well, which gave him a 5-second penalty. Pitted, pretty much a slam dunk. That's always going to happen. Said over team radio the car was undrivable. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Jonty sent me a link. He pitted under the virtual safety car for Ocon for soft, served his penalty there, but it was a slow stop anyway, for one reason or another. Was he the one with the slow jacks, actually? I think I said that for somebody else, but I think it was actually Alonso I'm thinking of there. But anyway, 25.8 seconds overall. So even if you take off the 5-second stop, that's still more than 20 seconds sat there. Pretty much game over at that point. Also had an incident straight on at turn 4 and rejoined. I'll come to Stroll in a moment, but there could be a reason. And actually, I'll tell you what, we'll do this first because it might even be in the official press release. Fernando Alonso said it was an extremely tough evening. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for us. The better that it happened all in one hit. Fair enough. And let's not forget, it's actually our first non-scoring race of the entire season. Is it? So, I'm arguing with Fernando Alonso. I don't believe you. Is it really? It is. Wow. That is the first time this season Fernando Alonso has not scored. Why is that a surprise to me? Lance Stroll's done a lot of not scoring, frankly. But that is the first time this season Fernando Alonso hasn't scored. So we'll let him off this one. We'll let you off, Fernando. There you go. Said, we came here with pretty high hopes, but Singapore is quite a unique event. Race pace is really dictated by the temperature of the tyres and maybe went a little bit too hard. There are a lot of things we need to investigate for this weekend. So no word in there. Mike, Crack, said it has been a really tough couple of days for the team in Singapore. Only had one car in the race. Obviously, Fernando's race came undone during the virtual safety car when the rear jack did not engage properly during the pit stop. That confirms that. We need to analyse exactly what happened. Even without the issue, scoring points would have been difficult today. So nothing in there. But John T, as I say, did send me a link in DMs. I've seen it, mate, but I was getting my stream ready, so apologies. Saying that it looks as though the rear element of the bottom wishbone is hanging free on the car when he's stationary at the turn 14 where he went straight on. So nothing confirmed from the team, but John T just pointing out there and explaining that's what it looks like from that angle. So there is also a video here for some reason suggesting something. I don't know what that's about. Whether that's, I'll try and translate the tweet if it'll let me. It depends whether we're allowed to. So Alonso broke something on the left side of the car just on lap 2. Maybe that's the explanation why the AMR 23 went so badly. Look from the second 3 below. Let's have a look. Yeah, no, there does appear to be something there. Yeah, so maybe that's got something to do with it. But there is nothing official in the press release. So maybe that's the thing they're going to investigate over the coming days before Japan. So we might get something before Japan, but unofficially, that's what John T spotted. So good spot, John T, and those on Twitter who did as well. Thanks for sending that to me. So there might have been a mechanical issue for it as well for Fernando Alonso. But just to let you know, that's what's been spotted, but no official word from the team. So I'll say that's what we've seen, and that's what it appears, but I won't commit to it just in case it turns out that it was a pigeon. I don't know, or something. John T adds to that, says you can see the left front suspension element wobbling, and there's also wheel tethers visible during the pit stop. So there we go. But it's, Red Raven's saying if that is suspension damage, I would have retired the car. But if that is suspension damage, then he's done a bloody good job to get it to that point of the race, to be fair to him. Probably dangerous, but still impressive to get that far. Lance Stroll did not start today, by the way. The statement from the team said that following Lance's crash in qualifying, Lance and the Aston Martin team have jointly agreed that he will not participate in this evening's race. The team faced a huge job repairing the car. And Lance is still sore following such a high impact. Lance's focus shifts to fully recovering ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix. If he didn't see qualifying yesterday, it was a massive smash for Lance. So I'm not totally surprised he was a little bit winded and sore, to be honest. Although somebody did say in the comments to the stream, in the comments to the news post put out this morning about it in the community thing, that it's quite odd that he seemed to be able to race so quickly after breaking his hand and his wrist, but he has that accident and he doesn't suffer any major injuries and he can't race. So I think it's my answer to that, just to make the point, I guess is why I'm bringing it up, is more to do with the fact the car was not going to be ready. And it might even come down to spares. It may even come down to spare parts, because Japan next week, not easy to fly stuff out there at short notice. Maybe they're thinking about that for next weekend as well. Lance was going to start at least 20th, probably the pit lane. Maybe they just felt there wasn't any point, and obviously he was feeling a bit sore anyway. It's not worth the risk. So withdraw him and then get everything ready for next week, get him recovered. I don't know. Obviously, best wishes to Lance, of course. I'm going to say that. Any driver that injures himself, whether it's a major injury or a minor injury, it doesn't matter. It's still, all the best to him. I hope he's feeling better for Japan. But I can't help but feel there's going to be some people getting very frustrated at Aston Martin at the moment. Again, I want to do a video on this. I will do a video on this probably after Japan. We'll see how he gets on that weekend. But, you compare the two of them, Fernando Alonso, and I know we're comparing Fernando Alonso to Lance Stroll here, but 170 points for Alonso, which is a phenomenal season. Lance Stroll down in 9th place has 47 points, has failed to score at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 races this season. Not all his fault, of course. There have been mechanical issues in there, among other things, but, he made the mistake in qualifying yesterday with the crash pushing too hard. His admission, I guess the point I'm always going to make is if Lawrence Stroll truly is talking about winning world championships with that team, he may have a decision, by the way, that I wouldn't want to make if that was my son, but he may have to make a very difficult decision in the future if he truly has ambitions of winning the world championship with Aston Martin, because if he does, either Lance needs to step his ass up, quite frankly, or, again, needs to be a tough decision. And I'll always make this point. I don't have children. If you want me to be perfectly honest and get a little bit deep into my life, I don't want bloody children. I can barely look after myself. It's a miracle I'm still alive. So I don't really want children. But if I had a son and I had the money to buy him a Formula One team and he wanted to race in it, I would do everything to get him in that car and do everything to keep him in that car. So I'm not going to pretend for a second that I'm against completely what Lawrence Stroll is doing and that I don't understand. I completely get that, you know. If the puppy wants to race in Formula One, I'm putting him in a Formula One car and I've had the money to do it. So there you go. That'd be quite interesting, wouldn't it? It'd be illegal. I'm pretty sure it's not in the FIA rules anyway. But yeah, I totally get Lawrence Stroll's position, and that's why I say it'll be a very difficult decision to have to make. But we'll get into that another day properly. It's a shame. Jonty will chuckle when I say it. I do like Lance Stroll. We have been accused on this channel more than a few times of being paid off by the Strolls for saying nice things about him. I don't think he deserves all the stick he's got over his career. I think he's had some fantastic races. I think he's a much better driver than people give him credit for. However, this season, especially the first stint of this season when that car was so good, kind of not good enough. In fact, it's not kind of not good enough. It just isn't not. It's just not good enough in that car. So interesting times ahead. But they are saying at Aston Martin that there is no obvious difference in performance that they're seeing. I can only assume they're watching a different series to everybody else, but that's what they're saying. And they're sticking with him for next year. So maybe we'll see what happens for 25. But he's got to step it up. He's got to. It's, again, Lawrence Stroll, all that investment from him, the consortium, everybody involved, going into that team, the new factory, the goals, the ambition to win world championships. You're not going to win. Because ultimately, you put Lance Stroll somewhere, even if you put him on 100 points, what's it cost them this season? Another 53 points, and they are, they're still in the fight with Mercedes and Ferrari for second place. So it could cost them a shot at second place, which is a lot of money. And if they do want to win the Constructors' Championship in the future, then they're not going to do it if there's such a big difference. But anyway, decisions. We have heard from the FIA. We'll come back to Lance Stroll later. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions on this one. I love the way they word them. So we've got fact. Car 23 overtaking car 11 under virtual safety car. I don't think that's a fact. That's the alleged infringement. But anyway, the stewards say during the virtual safety car period, Alex Albon, who was exiting the pits, and Perez who was on track, arrived at safety car line 2 at the same time. It's one of them, is it? The timing system was unable to determine that there was any difference in their respective times at the arrival of safety car line 2. Video evidence was inconclusive, and combined with an examination of the virtual safety car delta times, and they've decided that no further action. Each of the team representatives believes that as definitive information was not available at the time, no further action should occur. The stewards agree with this view. So no further action because there was apparently literally nothing between them. So no penalty for Alex Albon. Had the beam won, it would have taken him from 11th to 11th, so it wouldn't have made any difference. And we're just waiting, I think, on the Perez decision, which is still not in. Oh, no, we've got it. It's there. Sorry, I missed that one. So the Perez one is in. It is. Brace yourself. No, it's actually a penalty this time. It's not a penalty that's actually a reprimand. It is actually a penalty. So it's a 5-second time penalty, shock horror, and 1 penalty point for a total of 3 in a 12-month period for Perez. I've already told you what the incident was. The stewards considered that it was an optimistic, in air quotes, late manoeuvre by the driver of car 11, and that it could be defined as diving in, and that there was nothing that the driver of car 23, Alex Albon, obviously could have done to avoid the collision. Accordingly, it's determined that Perez was predominantly to blame. We note the presence of the slower car 40. Screw you. Liam Lawson wasn't slow. In front of car 23 caused the driver of car 11 to believe he could make the overtake, and therefore, in mitigation of penalty, were determined to allocate only 1 penalty point. So it's a 5-second penalty and 1 penalty point because apparently my Liam the legend Lawson, was going too slow. Shut up. I'm not having that. Tongue in cheek. So car 23 couldn't have done anything. Predominantly to blame. Sergio Perez, 5-second penalty, which has destroyed his race and taken him from P8 and 13 seconds behind Piastri to P8 and 8 seconds. Add 5 on Sean. Work it out. 18 seconds. And he's now only a few seconds clear of Liam Lawson as opposed to the 11. So it's not really done anything. There you go. Yes, Del, diving in was a quote. I will read that word for word again just for you because I think you seem to be enjoying this one. The stewards considered that this was an optimistic late manoeuvre by the driver of car 11, that it could be defined as diving in. That is literally, and they've got them in quotes as well, optimistic and diving in. So even the FIA getting sassy with their wording there. So there you go, Del. That can give you a chuckle with that one. They are the decision. So it's no penalty for Alex Albon for the safety car infringement and and a 5-second penalty, for Sergio Perez, and it has changed neither of their races. Obviously, it didn't for Albon because... There you go. Yeah, whatever. It is what it is. Driver of the day. Let me know. Who have you got in the comment section? Carlos Sainz won the official driver of the day. One surname. I will come to you and read them out. Read a few of them out. What can I say? I mean, let's start with what I always do. Make sure I give some people that deserve shout-outs. Obviously, Liam Lawson is going to get a shout out from me. He could probably not turn up to a race and he'd still get one, but I think he was absolutely fantastic today. Great result for AlphaTauri. I'm not going to say Perez. He did have a good comeback, but he also crashed into a few people. Oscar Piastri, fantastic drive to recover. Pierre Gasly, really good drive as well with some good points. Even Max Verstappen coming from 11th and all the circumstances in the race to make it into 5th place. Lewis Hamilton with that racing towards the end. Lando Norris was fantastic, but I can't not give it. Well, I can if I want. I could give it to Esteban Ocon if I want, but I in myself, I can't not give it to Carlos Sainz. He was absolutely fantastic today. And it's not just the fact he won. It's not because he won that he gets it. He also gets it because of that mega brain thinking, as I said earlier. These guys are coming at me. Mercedes are a threat. I need to back up, give Norris DRS and help him to defend, which gives me a buffer between them. That is brilliant thinking. So I have to give it to Carlos Sainz this week. And it's funny because there were quite a few that could get a shout for driver of the day, but it still feels like quite an easy and obvious pick. So nothing against Norris. I think he was superb as well. Nothing against anybody else I've mentioned, but it has to be Carlos Sainz for me today. I think he was absolutely fantastic. Great thinking, great driving. And I'm loving the second half of 2023 Carlos Sainz. I really am. I'll just do the super chats, by the way, while you're getting your drivers of the day, and I'll read those out. But thank you very much to AC. Very much thank you. 32 months in a row. Goodness me, mate. Thank you very much for your support as a member. Says Lawson and Daniel Ricciardo for AlphaTauri in 24. Yuki to Red Bull Reserve or maybe Williams, ? I did actually touch on that earlier, but we can come back to that if you want to, mate. I think my point was that I'd put Lawson in there with Yuki or Ricciardo, possibly Yuki if it was me, but I would understand why they go with Ricciardo. But I think if they don't stick with Sargent at Williams, then why not put Yuki in there? But he could even end up as an Aston reserve if the rumours of him being linked because of the Honda ties potentially, well, not potentially, they are coming in, aren't they, to give them a power unit in 26, then maybe that's an option. Thank you very much to Ruby as well for your super chat. Says Team LH, obviously. Oh, come on, Sean. Did anyone else see how close to the wall Lando was before George hit it? I wonder if attacking and defending was too much for George Russell. I did, Ruby. Thank you very much for your super chat again and your support. Always good to see you. Yeah, I think he hit the wall. I believe the replay show it. I think Norris said himself he hit the wall in the same spot. So talk about fine margins in Formula One all the time, don't we? There's another fine margin. Norris hits that wall. He's fine and finishes second. Russell hits the same wall. He's out the race. It really is fine margins in F1 sometimes. So there you go. Let's have a look at what you guys are saying in chat for your driver of the day. Warden says Carlando. Yes. That is sitting on the fence, Warden. I love it. I'm going to steal that. Start putting names together when I can't think of anything. Random says Ocon. Mr. Bungle says Lawson. Ruby says Hamilton. I'm shocked, Ruby. Vesk says Russell. Red Raven says it's got to be Sainz. Brilliantly managed. Kaori says Sainz. Mickey says Ocon. Del says Carlando double act. Yeah, they're basically teammates now. Ayinka says Carlos Sainz, but also Lawson. Thank you. Crystal Racing as well. Sainz and Lawson. Carlanson says Lee Nooks. Who? Oh yeah, Lawson. Yeah, sorry. So Carlos, Lando, and Lawson. I like that. Piastri P17 to P7 for Williams. Great drive, really great drive, and again, really impressed with Piastri this season. Villas says Sainz. Hank says Norris. C says, sad shout out for Ocon. Yeah, bless him. Max Flashheart says Lawson and Sainz. Will F1 Gaming says Nicholas Latifi. Lol. Irene says Sainz. DRD Nobody says Piastri for me. Matthew says Lawson. John says it can't be anybody but Sargent. Oh, no, it doesn't. Sorry, I read that wrong. Says it can't be anyone but Sainz. That was a drive on the same level as Prime Schumacher. Bold call there from John T. Let's not get into that. Daniel says Sainz won the slow driver's way, the slow car Carlos way. Brad says Russell. Purple Zebra says Sainz. Who else haven't we got? Free says slow button on. Yep. Richie says Sainz. Piastri for DRD. Nobody. I think I've read that one. Mason says Stroll. Quite an achievement, definitely. Brad says Stoffel. Thank you, Brad. I think you're the first one to throw that one in there. So that's good. Let's have a look. Yeah, Piastri didn't have the upgrade that Lando got, says Daniel. Good point. Yeah, no upgrade for Piastri as well. So that's what could he have done with the upgrade today. So looking forward to seeing what he does next weekend. Brad says Magnussen. Point. Yeah, good thing for him. Depends on who wins the rest of the season out of Yuki and Daniel, who Liam replaces. Says fill in the blanks. That's a good point. I actually never thought about that one. Good shout, mate. Sainz would drive the day by miles. If anyone thinks otherwise, they are delusional, says Irene. It's all about opinions, Irene. George had no rears left at that point. Absolutely. The winner says Sainz, definitely. Max says Sainz. Let's do 5 more if we've got them. Adam says Ocon. I've lost my chat. Where have you gone? There we go. It's back. What happened there? Weird. Zach says it has to be Sainz, but also Lawson for scoring his first points. Sainz playing F1 manager, says Justin. Owley says Sainz. Charles says everyone. Why not? One more. Go on. One more to come through. I voted for Russell, but the clip the wall, so Norris gets it for me, says Nick. So there you go. Charles says Albon, Lawson. Thank you very much for your picks there, your drivers today. Some good mix there, but a lot of Carlos. I'm not surprised at that one at all. Please do leave a like, by the way. And don't forget to subscribe as well. 228 likes, 566 watching. Let's see if we can get that to 300. That would be amazing. Been a while since we've got a stream over 300 whilst live. So please do leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Preview on Thursday. And of course, then the 2 live streams, the Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, Saturday and Sunday. And morning as well. So you're going to get Sean on coffee first thing in the morning, which could be interesting. Actually, to be fair, it's not Sean on coffee in the morning got an issue with it. Sean who's had coffee at night that's the problem. I have no filter past about 9 p.m. So people keep asking me to do F1 Word after dark occasionally, but there's a few things that I wouldn't say on a stream like this that I'd be quite happy to say past 9-10 o'clock when I'm not really bothered about what I have to say, because I can sleep and then it's a new day and I don't have to think about it. But anyway, if you have any questions, that was random. If you have any questions, please do pop them in chat. Ideally, of course, related to the race, that would be fantastic. But if you've got anything F1 related, of course, I'll answer it. If I've missed anything that you think I should talk about a bit more, or major incidents from the race I've missed, let me know as well, and I will do that one as well, answer those questions. But you know me, I'll answer pretty much anything. So thank you very much for your super chats and your support as well. Obviously, super chats, have to read them out if they follow community guidelines. So if it's a question you have to ask, or it's the end of the world, then you'll do it in a super chat. I'll definitely get there, but I always come to you guys in chat, as you know. So good to talk to you all once again post race. On the channel update I talked about the other week, I will do one eventually. I think I need to decide what I'm doing first. If you're on Discord as a patron, you'll know exactly what's going on. So thank you for all your support over there, by the way, last couple of days. It's really good of you. Very, very good. I'll tell you what I'll start with then. There was a comment yesterday, and if you come back again, then you'll get my response, that said after qualifying that it was something along the lines of, when Verstappen wins, it's his talent. When he has a bad weekend, it's the car. Drop your bias for a second, everybody, and look at this as a reasonable individual. It's absolutely the car this weekend. Max Verstappen's talent hasn't fucked off in 2 weeks. Okay, the talent that Verstappen hasn't evaporated in 2 weeks. And if it was just the car, as I said when Lewis Hamilton was winning and Valtteri Bottas was finishing 5th in the championship, as I would have said if I had the channel when Vettel dominated and Webber was not in the top 2, if it was just the car, then Perez would be second pretty much every race. It's not just the car. It is also not just the driver. It's a combination of the two. That's how Formula One works. You cannot win races in a bloody pedal go-kart or on your push bike. You need your car, and you need, put Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, for argument's sake, in the Alfa Romeo. They're not winning races. They're not winning championships. You need the car, but you also have to have a driver who's good enough to make the difference in that car. And that's that. So it's absolutely the car this weekend. It's quite clear that it's the car. If Perez had been on pole yesterday and Verstappen was 11th and knocked out in Q2, then it was probably an off day for Verstappen. Probably. But it's clearly the car. In the same way that those seasons that I've talked about a couple of times, when Mercedes would turn up at somewhere like Singapore in their dominant seasons and wouldn't be winning the race because they'd be struggling, it wasn't that Hamilton had suddenly had all his talent sucked out of him. It was, could have worded that better. It was that the car wasn't performing that weekend. That's how Formula One works, and it's very simple. So I think most people get it, but I wanted to answer that. It was easier to say it in a stream than to put it in a reply. I'm not attacking that person. Everyone can have their opinion. If people want to pop edgy stuff like that out there because they think they know what they're talking about, that's fine. But it's about both. Max Verstappen doesn't win the championship in the Alfa Romeo, but he's doing it in the Red Bull, and he's doing a cracking job at it. And by the way, just to reiterate what I said yesterday, he's still going to win the championship. He can't do it in Japan now, interestingly enough. Red Bull are also going to win the Constructors' Championship. There's no doubt about that. This weekend has not changed anything, except for we had a different winner. It stopped the run, and it gave people a thrilling end to that race. There you go. So it's not. I'm not annoyed at it. It does annoy me a little bit when you get stuff like that. But I've rapidly learned in the 6 years that I've been doing this now that actual opinion in the world is not necessarily the same as, for example, Twitter opinion. Is how I feel there. Thank you again to Ruby for another super chat. Says, can we go through the teams and try figure out who is the number one driver for each team? It'll be interesting compared to the 2023 preview you had. Thank you very much, Ruby. we could do that on a Wednesday. Maybe not on a Wednesday evening stream. I'm not going to do it in the race reaction. I do appreciate the super chat, so thank you. But I think that's one for a midweek stream, nice and chill. Have a beer or something and just talk about things like that and try and work out who's where. I'd certainly like to, at the end of the season, look at the teammate battles, what I thought at the start of the season, because I don't know if I did a video on it, but I have written down who I thought would come out on top in all the teams. So it'd be interesting to do that after the season, maybe as a winter thing. Maybe that could be the Christmas stream. A couple of days before Christmas, we'll sit down and do that one as well. But yeah, I'd be happy to do that on another stream, definitely. So yeah. Red Raver says, most important question, F1 word, was there any sighting of a lizard today aside from Marco? Cheeky. No lizards today. No lizards today. I think they're still in mourning for Larry, which is fair enough. Yeah. Yes. Was it you? It might have actually been you, Marianne, actually, in the comments yesterday. Just to reiterate, I'm not attacking you or having a go. I'm giving you my view. But yeah, strategy as well. Car driver, you're right with strategy. Team. I'll tell you what. I'm going to come back at you with that one, Marianne. Car driver and team. Because it's a team sport, isn't it? You win and lose together, as Lewis Hamilton used to say a lot. And I think, who said it yesterday? Somebody said it yesterday on team radio, which made me chuckle. I can't remember who it was. So it's something about it. I flicked a switch. We flicked a switch and it worked. It might have been Ocon, and the team said, "Oh, we didn't do it." And then the driver responded with, "Well, no, I did." But we win and lose together. And the engineer just went, I'll remember that. Yeah, just remember that one for the future. So yeah, it's team. It's absolutely the team. And Ruby's right as well. Team Mercedes today, the strategy for Mercedes was superb. I mean, I should have made this point when I was talking about them really, but actually they sort of lost out because Russell was on for P2. We'll never know, of course, whether Norris might have got through or whatever, but in that situation, it's sort of almost nothing to lose for them going for that. Of course, again, they did technically lose out because they lost a place, but they still got a podium. But a team like Mercedes, if they've got a sniff of a win, this could be, if this is the one track that Red Bull feared this year, and it's come true, it was a track for them to fear, this could have been Mercedes' only shot at a win this season. They had to go for it. If you've got Alex Albon in P2 and not George Russell, Williams are not making that call. They're trying to bank that position and hang on for the points. But Mercedes, they had to go for it. This could have been their one chance of a win this season, because Japan, I expect Red Bull to be favourites. Qatar, we'll never know. Could go either way. We've only been there once. COTA could be a good one for Red Bull. Mexico could be, although it might be a bit closer. Mexico tends to be. Interlagos is a lottery. So is Las Vegas this year because it's the first time. Abu Dhabi could be a Red Bull one as well. So, you've got to go for it. You have to try. And I will never, ever criticise a team for not giving that a go in that situation. So we'll see what happens. You never know. It could be the start of something. I don't think it is. But there you go. John T says, bring on Vegas. It's going to be chaos. I still can't work Vegas out. I tried to do the track map the other day to trace it for the preview, and I can't work out where they're going. So that could be quite interesting. You might not get a track map because I can't work that one out. Let's have a look. Where are you in the chat for questions? Has Sainz surpassed Leclerc at Ferrari now? Asks James Rich. I mean, he's ahead of him in the championship, if you want me to really cop out with the answer. So, yes. I think this season, I don't think Sainz, I've said this before, I don't think Sainz has got the credit he deserves for this season. He's actually been, both Ferrari drivers have been fairly consistent. I know, Leclerc had a couple of DNFs with mechanical issues, but there are actually, they've both been picking up decent points most weekends. The only real outlier is Silverstone, where they were 10th and 9th, but I think both have been quite consistent. But I think he's got the potential to this season. The reason I'm saying that is because Leclerc's had 2 poles and 3 podiums, and Sainz has only just started scoring poles and podiums. So it would be a little bit harsh to sit here and say Leclerc's not washed, but you know what I mean, and make out that Sainz is suddenly by far the best driver there because he's had 2 really good races, but 3 really, because 5th in the Netherlands wasn't bad. But I think he's got a shot this year, and he's definitely having a better season than most people seem to give him credit for. I would say so. Yeah. So I think yeah, exactly. Cornelius says, as of now, yes. So it's sort of where they are now. This weekend, Jerry was better, but Leclerc also was the sacrificial lamb. And if Leclerc had got P1 off the line, somehow got past Russell and then got past Sainz, maybe Sainz has been the sacrificial lamb. We'll never know. But Sainz has been on it all weekend, to be fair, and he was as well in Monza. So difficult to say at this stage. Come back to me after maybe Qatar, 2 more races, and we'll have a look at that again. But Carlos Sainz, and it's not a recent thing, by the way, with Sainz. It's not just because he's had a good couple of races. I don't think Sainz ever seems to get the praise he deserves for him. He's not. I don't think he's the best driver out there. I don't think he's necessarily going to be winning world championships in the future, but I think he's way better than a lot of people give him credit for generally. I've always said that with Carlos. I think I always see, and a lot of people disagree with me on this, so I've had this conversation with guests before and they completely disagree, but I kind of look at Carlos Sainz in a way as the one that got away for Red Bull. I know there were big question marks over, the relationship at Toro Rosso between Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, but they're both a bit older now. They've both got a lot more experience in F1. And when Ricciardo left and they were struggling with Gasly and they were struggling with Albon and they didn't know what to do and they went for Perez, I think I said a lot of the time, Sainz slotted in there quite nicely to replace Ricciardo, and obviously he went to Renault. I think did the right thing for him. Absolutely at the time, get out of that environment, give himself the best chance. He got to race at Renault, he picked up podium at McLaren, he's won races at Ferrari, so it's the right thing for him to do. But at the time, with everything with Gasly and Albon, he just felt like the one that got away. But John says, I always disagree, even if I agree, just because. I know. Yeah, what was it you said the other week? I'm just being a git. I'm used to it, John T. There are some days where if I see the sky's blue, you tell me it was actually a very faint shade of red, or that actually colour doesn't really exist and all of this, and we'd have a non-argument about it. But anyway. Apparently the negative relationship was largely between their dads, says Zach. Yeah, I don't really know the ins and outs of it. That's why I said the alleged or the apparent issue. So yeah, let's get back to some questions. I kind of went off on one there. Thank you very much, James, for that. That was a good question. Are you and Sean going to be doing the Massa live stream, John T? That was to you, John T. I'll have to answer that one. It's on my list of content. Don't worry, it is something I want to do, to talk about it. I'm just waiting to see if I just to reiterate, I don't think much will come of it. It's again, I've made the point a few times now. it's Bernie Ecclestone. He loves to stir the pot. There's no guarantee that what he said is truthful. He's always been quite bitter since selling F1. And he might just be doing it to try and stir the pot for Liberty Media a bit. But the point I've made before, with respect, of course, and I'll say it in the nicest way possible, but I can't really put it any other way. There's talk, the conversation was that, and the rumours and reports are that Bernie, Charlie Whiting and Max Mosley knew about it all and kept it quiet. The problem is that's coming from Bernie Ecclestone, and the two people there who can corroborate that story or deny it, whatever, are dead. So you're not going to get any reply from them. So you've not got any evidence on that side. So it's going to be very difficult to prove anything went on there. And so long ago as well. So long ago. I get why he's probably a bit peed about it, but, that's it. But I always feel like Bernie Ecclestone, you need to be careful anyway, because he did a lot of great stuff for Formula One, but people talk about, I see it all the time. Oh, Bernie wouldn't have had these stupid V6 turbo hybrids. Oh, Bernie wouldn't have sold the rights to Sky. I mean, Bernie literally sold the rights to Sky, and Bernie was literally in charge of the commercial rights when the engines were signed off. So Bernie did have a say in it. And I know that FIA and FOM are two different bodies, and the FIA make the rules and FOM handle the commercial rights, but Bernie would have had conversations with the FIA over the rules, so he was here when all of that got signed off on. So don't think if Bernie Ecclestone came back tomorrow, we'd be back to V10s and it would all be on the BBC or ITV again, because it wouldn't. He sold the rights to Sky. He's not. Again, he did amazing things for Formula One. He deserves a lot of credit for how we view Formula One now. It wasn't as... I don't recall. I might be wrong, Jonty. You're old like me. I don't know if BBC used to show the qualifying on a Saturday, but ITV, well, they certainly did. You used to get the qualifying and you get the race in full. He's responsible for a lot of what we see on the commercial rights side of things, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. But he's also a bit of a shit stirrer. So you have to, back to the point. My point is, he may say we knew about this. The only other people that can actually confirm or deny that are no longer with us. So it's Bernie's word against, and I doubt there's any evidence out there, because if there's any evidence, Ferrari would have pursued that straight after 2008 if the evidence was there. So we'll see what happens. I suspect, I'm not going to say Massa's definitely in it for the money, but I would suspect there'll be possibly some sort of payout or agreement if it goes too far, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And also, as I think Toto Wolff said it as well, to be fair, and credit to him for saying it, actually, it opens up a can of worms that we really don't need to be opening up, because how far do you go back? There'll be screams for Abu Dhabi 2021 to be looked at. There'll be screams for 1994 Adelaide to be looked at. Suzuka 1980, well, both of them, Senna and Prost, both years. There'll be screams for to go and look back at that. How far do you go? It's like Toto said, it's a can of wolves. We don't need to be opening. That's it now. That's the saying. Thank you, Toto. That's it. It's a can of wolves now. It's not a can of worms. Anyway, let's. Oh, I've got a new thing now. Oh no. Oh no, I don't blame Massa for it. But also, actually, I'll say this. Final point for now, okay? We will do this in a stream properly, but final point for now. What you have to remember as well is his legal team are saying, yes, you've got a case. Yes, we can win you this. Just bear in mind that if they say, no, you haven't got a case, they're not getting paid. So, there's a little bit of an ulterior motive in this for the legal side as well, because, of course, they're going to pursue a case and say there is a case, because then they get lots of money and they get paid. If they say there isn't a case, they're not getting paid. So we'll see what happens, but I suspect not a lot. Again, it's a can of wolves. A can of wolves, really, rather than Toto. There you go. I don't particularly like Bernie as a person, but I have an immense amount of respect for what he did to develop Formula One, says Max. Don't see why they can't just run the V8s and V10s on greener fuel, says James Rich. I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. If no one else gets a win this year other than Red Bull, will this be Sainz's defining moment of his career unless he wins the title? And how many wins do you think Sainz will get in total, says CPB1? I don't know about defining moment, but it's certainly... I mean, when it comes back round again, in fact, I'll put it straight back up now on the bottom left on the stats there. If you look at that there, it's all blue, and then there's just this little red bit. So I don't know about defining moment, but when we look back at this season, if Red Bull win the rest of them, then it's certainly going to be people will look at it as maybe one of his best. In fact, I think it was one of his best drives. Think about it in the future. I think it was right now. I would certainly rate that drive ahead of Silverstone where he got his first win. So I don't know about defining moment. That's an interesting point though. I might have a think about that one. CPB's got a way of throwing questions at me that make me think, and then I need to go away, and then I can't ever come to a conclusion because it's difficult. No, but in terms of how many wins he could get in his career, where are we? Carlito, what have we got? He is 20. Is Carlos Sainz 29? I was younger than that. Anyway, he's younger than me, considerably younger than me, but 29. So based on Fernando Alonso and how he seems to be going, you're looking at another 100 years in the sport. So, he could hit double figures. But it's the same. Back to the Red Bull point. It's going to come down to what the car is, doesn't it? At the end of the day, we need to wait and see. If Ferrari keep moving forward, they seem to be on a good run at the moment, or they are on a good run at the moment. If he can build that into next year, or the team can, and they deliver a car capable of winning, then maybe he can hit double figures. But equally, if they end up with an absolute crap box, like we've seen in the past from Ferrari, because let's face it, and this is coming from somebody who is a fan of Ferrari, it can go either way sometimes with Ferrari. One year they could build an absolute monster, another year they build the worst car you've ever witnessed that team put out. So it could go either way, but he's got a tricky... I mean, Leclerc as well is a tough teammate to go up against, but he could hit double figures. 8 more, it'd be a big push, but yeah. Cornelius says 7. Be another 5, feels a bit more realistic, but again, it's all down to the car, isn't it, at the end of the day? So I think just to answer Richie's question, so would it be a can of wolves or a can of wolf? I think we need to go wolf because it was Toto's comment, wasn't it? So I think we need to go can of wolves, a can of Totos. But yeah, going back to the Strolls, would you keep your son in F1 when he underperforms, or would you look into getting him into WEC IMSA, where he would be great addition for any Aston Martin program? Asked Red Raven. I did think about this actually. I think in the past I've thought about it. I think if he was to leave Formula One and the team decided to send him a different way, and Lawrence had a word and said, look, Lance, we need to put somebody in that car. Because again, as I've said so many times the last few weeks, just look at the number of drivers and the caliber of drivers who are becoming available next season. Aston Martin, if Lance Stroll if not earlier, by mid-season, hasn't really stepped it up, they've got to start looking at the Sergio Perez's, the Carlos Sainz's, the Charles Leclerc's, the other drivers out there, the Gaslys and the Ocons. In fact, I've got a list somewhere of who is available next year. So I think they will have to look at those drivers. But I still think, and I get what you're getting at, but I still think that that's a very difficult decision for Lawrence Stroll. I really do. Did I save driver contracts? I did. Let's have a look. So Perez is out of contract at the end of next year. Fernando Alonso is as well, but I think he's got an option for 25, hasn't he? I think he's got another +1. I've just put it Lance Stroll forever. Leclerc, Sainz, Piastri officially, although I think he's got another year option. Ocon, Gasly, Alex Albon, maybe lesser, but I'm going to say him anyway. Magnussen, Hulkenberg. Bottas has got a +1 option, but I think technically it's up at the end of next year if they want it to be. Zhou as well. And then, of course, you might have a Tsunoda available or a Daniel Ricciardo if things don't work out. So I think, or whichever way AlphaTauri choose to go. So a lot of drivers up for grabs next year. So I think they'd be stupid not to at least have that in the back of their minds. So maybe that's what they're thinking. Give him a little bit longer, see how he gets on first part of next year, and then start talking, or even start talking to him before that. An Alonso Tsunoda partnership with Honda coming in could work, as an example. But just to kind of answer the question directly, I think whatever happens with Lance Stroll, I don't think he'll be out of the Aston Martin program altogether. I think he will, like you say, maybe go to one of the Aston programs in another formula. I think that'll be where they go, or another series. I think that's what they'll do with him. I don't think he'll be out completely. I don't think the tennis thing's a load of nonsense. Even if he does love tennis, he's not going to suddenly start competing at Wimbledon from next year, is he? He's not pro, so it's not going to happen. So I think that's the route I would expect to see them go down if they do make a change. But it's still a difficult, and if it is my son, I wouldn't keep him in that seat if he was underperforming for a couple of reasons. Firstly, if you've got the ambition of winning a world championship, you need your second driver to perform, whether it's your son or not. Secondly, you've got to think about your son's state of mind, I guess, as well. Do they really want to watch him suffer through this and have to go through what he goes through from the media and the fans and stuff like that? There'll be part of that at play as well. So I think, yeah. And Stroll's not a bad driver. I'll reiterate the point for the millionth time on this channel. It's just not working for him this year. He's not had a bad Formula One career. I'm sorry. I'm reading your stats now. I know it's not the most exciting thing, but he's got 3 podiums, not always had a particularly good car. He got a pole position brilliantly at Turkey in 2020, I think it was, wasn't it? He's had some great results throughout his career. He's driven nicely. He's had some shockers, of course he has. And he's not the best driver out there, not by a flipping long way, but he's also not the worst driver we've seen in Formula One, and I don't think he's the worst driver on the grid this year, quite frankly. So there you go. That's my point on Stroll. Fill in the blank says the rumour of Aston going back to WEC or WEC might be Lawrence wanted to give Lance Stroll a shot in Le Mans instead. Good point. I guess the ultimate point is, or the overarching point is, even if he's his son, there comes a point where you've got to make a decision. If you truly are as ambitious as you're saying, he's in this form. He may pick it up next year, but in this form, right now, that's not going to win you constructors titles. No way. You'll be in the mix if Alonso's winning consistent races, for example, but you've got to have a driver that can deliver as well. Sergio Perez hasn't been great at times this year. He's had some good races, some very good races, won races, but he's just about doing enough to keep his Red Bull seat with second in the drivers and the constructors not really even a battle, is it? But if he was performing as badly as Lance Stroll, then I'm not even going to finish that saying that's stupid. I think Max would do it on his own, wouldn't he? Don't you think? Doesn't it feel like looking at that championship table? Max Verstappen 374 points. Probably not. Well, yeah, he has. But yeah, anyway, I know what I'm getting at. I'm not going to try and explain it again because I'll just go around in circles. Looking at the investment going on at Aston Martin, did Williams screw up by not being more accommodating to the Strolls? I think the problem at that point, John T, is, and I've said this a lot, is that Sir Frank and Claire and that were all still there, weren't they? And they were very much, I hate using the phrase, but it's the only way I can word it, stuck in their ways. They were very much, Constructors' Championship should mean that we should build everything, which is fair enough. I respect that, and it's sort of technically right, really, isn't it? You need to construct things if you're going to be a Constructors' Champion. But they were very much about Williams being an independent outfit, whereas since Dorilton have come in, they've accepted a closer relationship with Mercedes, for example, and that's worked. And I think even with the Strolls there, I don't think Williams would have embraced the idea of, for example, Lawrence Stroll coming in and investing massively in the team. I don't think they'd have accepted that. Had Dorilton come in and the Strolls were still there, maybe. But, for all, and Lawrence Stroll gets a lot of stick from F1 fans, but just, I will always point, I know somebody might have come in and bought the team, but don't forget, with a little help from Sergio Perez, he saved one of the most popular underdog teams on the grid. So I'm glad it went the way it did, I guess is what I'm saying, John T. But I don't think Sir Frank would have been maybe as accommodating generally. I think you're possibly right on that, but I don't think he would have accommodated it anyway. So the legend that is Sir Frank Williams, bless him. Actually, yeah, no, good point. I think the Mazepins would have bought Force India, wouldn't they, if the Strolls hadn't? That would have been interesting, wouldn't it? How that would have gone on. Let's, a few more questions then. We will round up at about 5 minutes. We'll round up maybe 10. Take it to the 2-hour mark. It was a fair enough race, so we can do that one. Any more questions? Hate Crofty, but loves his Wikipedia jab at Toto towards the end, says Dell. Yeah, I've made my feelings clear on Crofty many times, and I think there's listening to the element of glee in his voice this weekend at Red Bull struggles, and I'll put that down. I'll be generous and put that down to him being a fan of the sport and nothing more, with a huge spoonful of skepticism there for you. But, he's taken a lot of joy in that. And I don't know how many times he talked about a British 1-2-3 today in the final stages, but there you go. Yeah, it could have been back on sale again, Raoul. Good point. Yeah, so I'm umming and erring because I'm just looking through the chat for questions because I went on a right little ramble there. So The worst driver this year, question mark, now that you mention it, says James. The worst driver this year? Probably. I am going to answer it, but just one of the most disappointing drivers of the year for me is Valtteri Bottas, believe it or not. I know I'm usually such a huge fan of Valtteri Bottas. I know, never criticise him, do I? But no, I was quite disappointed in Bottas this year. I know the car's not what it was at the start of last year, and you know you can only do so much with a disappointing car. But I'd still have thought, as much as I like Zhou Guanyu, I would still have thought that he'd have a bigger margin over Zhou, to be fair. So he's probably one of my bigger disappointments. But I think you are looking at, honestly, I think the table doesn't lie. I think you're looking at, De Vries, Sargent, and Stroll. And I know you're going to go, well, hang on, he's up in 9th place, but he's in 9th place and a hell of a long way off his teammate. I don't. Yes, it's Fernando Alonso. I don't care if it's Fernando Alonso. I would not expect, even with it being Fernando Alonso, a near 130 odd point gap. It's absolutely mental. Stroll should be closer than that. Not on top of him, not equal on points or anything like that, but he shouldn't be that far off. And he, based on where the Aston was at the start of the season, he shouldn't be struggling to fend off Pierre Gasly and Oscar Piastri in the championship. So he's got to go in there. But I think De Vries, Sargent, Stroll goes in there as well. That's kind of where I'm at. The reason I'm a bit about it is because it is Sargent's first season, but there comes a point where you can't keep using that excuse, because it is his rookie season, but it's not like the seasons are like they used to be, 16 races long, is it? He should be showing big signs of improvement. And although I think Williams said that sort of mid-season he was starting to show some improvement, I don't think he's taken that much of a step. So although I still think they're probably going to stick with him, I'm a little bit more concerned for him based on the last couple of races than I was a few weeks ago. So yeah, I think you can throw Perez in as a disappointment as well in some ways this season, particularly in qualifying at times. But as long as he finishes second, that is apparently enough. There you go. What happened to Yuki? I missed it. Back to the race as handyman. So what happened to Yuki? So first lap, I think it was, Sergio Perez came up his inside. I think the general consensus in chat seemed to be agreeing that it was a first lap racing incident. Kind of Perez has caught the inside, is sort of halfway alongside. Tsunoda's come across to take the corner and cut back on some cars in front of him. Maybe doesn't realise Perez is there, and then there's contact, and that gave him, I think, a puncture, and that was a DNF. In fact, I can tell you that's just a good prompt to go and check what AlphaTauri have said. So, 1 second while I have a drink and load up the press release. I have to put the drink behind me now, because the amount of times that I'm throwing my arms about on a stream and nearly knock it over the PC, which would be an absolute nightmare. Yuki says, firstly, congratulations to Liam for scoring points, especially at the first time in Formula One in Singapore. I believe Crofty made the point, first driver in F1 history to score their debut points in Singapore, so well done to him. Very frustrated with his own race, because it seems we didn't have a very clean weekend in the last 2 races, especially after the team brought massive development in Singapore. I had a good start, made contact on the first lap, and our side pod got damaged along with the radiator and cooling system, so we had to retire. So it was the damage to radiator, side pod, cooling systems, not a puncture. So there we go. That explains that one. I wasn't able to reach checker flag, obviously. Very sorry for the team, but nothing there on Sergio Perez. Just checking if Jody Eggington has said anything on Perez. Nothing there. And Liam the Legend Lawson said, I would have liked a few more Grand Prix to prepare for this one, but obviously when you get the opportunity, you have to take it with both hands. Honestly, that's what I'm trying to do, and today was fantastic. I'm happy with the race, and I definitely gave it everything because I think we maximise the car's performance. I need to look at the start, as I said earlier. We'll talk about this earlier. 2 weekends in a row that he's lost positions, and that's compromising them or making their lives harder. Stayed out of trouble with the rest of the race and kept it clean. Hard when you're struggling for pace, trying to maximise your tools and get everything out of it. So the race was physically demanding. At the end of the day, though, happy to have scored first points. And I was going to see if Sergio Perez said anything in his quotes. I doubt it. No, nothing in there. Nothing at all about that one. I didn't think there would be, to be fair. So that's it really on those ones. I wanted to check the Alfa Romeo one, didn't I, as well? That was the other one. Let's have a look. Bottas needed to take some gambles today, which is what he did with his strategy, of course, running long. Timing of the safety car didn't really work, so he's been compromised the same way Red Bull were with that strategy. Couldn't stop to switch to the mediums at that stage, hoping to get to the end of the race was not going to happen. We weren't making much progress, and eventually our race came to an end with a technical issue. We had to stop the car as a precaution. What was that technical issue? Have they said? No, they haven't said so. But yeah, technical issue. Zhou, don't think there's anything much in there. Safety car timing. He pitted at the end of the first or second lap, did Zhou, to try and take advantage of anything in the future. So it was a good decision, but didn't really work out for him either. So there we go. I think it was Haas as well, wasn't I, that you wanted me to do a double check on and see what's going on there. 1 second while we try and load Haas now. Press releases are great for fun. I know they're really thrilling, but I like to go through and just have a quick read because sometimes you get the answers to the questions we've been asking in the stream. Magnus said, when a safety car came out, I pitted and had really good pace on the soft tyre and came up and then got lucky when Russell hit the wall and gave me the point. It's very satisfying for me personally. Fair enough. And Hulkenberg says, we managed the one stop, but at the end I was just a falling fruit. Okay. Fair enough. I think we might have missed an opportunity pitting during the virtual safety car. I feel there could have been points there as I was way ahead of Kevin and he scored. So there you go. I know press releases are really not great, but again, it sometimes answers the questions. Let's look at Suzuka weather. A few people have asked that now. Suzuka circuit weather. Let's have a look. So, dry, allegedly. So, with the usual preview style caveat here, that we are a long way out from the weekend, and it's going to change massively before then. There's no specifics, but rain is forecast for Friday. Cloudy but dry on Saturday and dry on Sunday is the current forecast. However, if you are new to F1, Japan is one of those tracks where it can get very wet very quickly. So it's not quite as bad as a Spa, for example, with its own climate, but it can get very wet and things do change. So at the moment, dry for the important sessions, but that doesn't mean it will be dry. So there we go. One more question then before we wrap up for today. Let's see what we've got and see if we find something we haven't rambled on about. Thank you, by the way, to those who have stuck around. I know sort of 250 people have gone. I'm not listening to this knobhead anymore. But thank you to those who are sticking around. Please do drop a like, by the way. We are 28 away from hitting that 300 mark, which would be amazing. So please do drop a like. Chat disconnected, apparently. So successfully reconnected. Thank you very much. Let's have a look at what we're going. Let's do one more question. Relatively, not quick fire, but relatively quick to answer. Otherwise, I'll be here for another 20 minutes talking about De Vries or something. Do you think it's a given that Max will win 5 championships in a row by 2025? Says, is it Mariolis 1000? I'll come to Super Chat in a second. What is the meaning of life, says Del. I suppose it depends where you live, but it feels like the meaning of life is work, earn money, pay taxes, and die. I'm not ending the stream on that. That's such a depressing end. Indian all day long, CPB. So do we think that Max will win 5 championships between now and the end of the 2025? So no. Well, no. I think he can. I think the field's already starting to close a little bit. We've seen it in recent weeks on Red Bull. So I think that's going to make things more interesting next year, for example. The field should, in theory, then converge a little bit more for 2025. So that might make it tougher. I think it's hard. I suppose, actually, honestly, it's hard to see him not doing it. But I'm basing that on a driver who's won, is it 12 races this year? Yeah. And it's difficult, even if you'd probably say he's going to win another few before the end of the year, let's say 4 minimum. So that's 16. That would be a record. It's hard to see him suddenly going from 16 wins to anything low enough to cost him a title next year. And I think when we spoke to, I think it was Nate Saunders from ESPN a few months ago on a stream, he was saying that the talk in the paddock was that people are kind of expecting Red Bull to be champions next year. and that they're already looking towards 25 and 26. There's rumours of a rule change in 2025 because F1 and the FIA like to go knee-jerk on these things when actually, as we've seen historically, more often than not, if you leave the rules stagnant, then the laws of diminishing returns kick in and the field converges and we end up with epic seasons. I almost wish they'd leave the race alone a little bit, but I understand why they have to keep changing them. So I sat here today, I think he will, but I wouldn't. I think it's tough for anybody to win 5 on the bounce. But he's definitely got this one. Definitely got this one. Very quickly, that super chat that just came in from Handyman. Thank you very much, mate, for your chat there. It says, grab a drink at the pub on me. Hit that like. Thank you very much for your super chat, Handyman. I will grab a drink, definitely. Really appreciate that support. And thank you to Ruby for another super chat. It says, super chat to hear you read this. Lewis is the GOAT. That's what Ruby said, that Lewis is the GOAT. You're talking to a Michael Schumacher fanboy, Ruby. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't know how anyone doesn't respect what Lewis Hamilton's achieved in Formula One. Whether you are a fan of his or not is irrelevant. And I think he's one of those drivers, in this, not as in terms of on the same level, but in the same way that Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel as 2 great examples, I feel, were as well. He'll be somebody that people look back at in 10 years' time when he's 10 years after retired and gone, yeah, he was pretty special. Whereas right now when he's racing, people aren't going to do that. So, but anyway, let's leave it there for this one before we go off on some random tangent. Thank you very much for your company this evening. Please do drop a like. Like I say, we are 15 away now from 300. Let's see if we can do that while I do my unnecessarily long sign off. You know what I'm like. And please do subscribe as well. Lots to come between now and the end of the season. There is going to be a shift of content or some newer content or some, it's not really new, is it? Returning to some older forms of content in the coming weeks. And next season, there will be, heads up, a major shift in content on the channel, but that doesn't mean I won't be here. As long as this channel survives the winter, I will be back in March as well. So please do get subscribed is my short version of that, so you don't miss out on any future content. You can follow me on social media as well. Always appreciated over there. I'll try and tweet a bit more than I do at the moment. You can support the stream as well on Patreon if you want to get your name at the end of videos. There are some tiers over there. Thank you to the new patrons recently. I think is it Gabriel, Tyler, Tacitus as well. I feel like there's another one in there. If I've not found you, I do apologise, but thank you for your support over on Patreon as well. You can support the stream via PayPal, Streamlabs and all of that as well. Should we round it off? Should we just go? I will be back on Thursday with the preview, of course, for one of my favourite tracks of the year, Japan. Suzuka. What a track. So please do join me for the preview on Thursday. Of course, then the Quali Waffle on Saturday and the race reaction on Sunday. But as ever, let's just go. Thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.